Thanks so much for joining us, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't want to get spoiled too much and like give away your bio,
Feel free.
but please introduce yourself and your current specialties and interests.
Yeah, so I'm a postdoc at UCLA's Robotics and Mechanisms Laboratory. We kind of build full robotic systems from the ground up. We specialize mostly in legged robots, but we've dabbled in other fields as well. One of our biggest projects right now is kind of a full-size humanoid robot, and we're kind of prepping for something called RoboCup, which is robots are still, at least from a college level, we're still ways away from what you would imagine what soccer-playing robots are like, but they're still very impressive. We machine motors from the ground up, do all the electronics, do all the coding and programming as well. So my lab's quite large, and we get a lot of interesting projects coming in.
For sure. So they're playing soccer.
Yeah, 2v2, kind of like yay tall and.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's the hardware is impressive. I think the software still needs some work to kind of catch up. So hopefully this summer goes well.
Yes, that's something cool part about this series too, is just seeing like what's actually going on, like how far do you think we've come, and what is that in comparison to the maybe expectations that there are out there? So you just talked about UCLA's lab that you're in, the robotics and mechanism lab. And yeah, what other projects are you currently working on as an active member in the lab, and how has maybe your understanding of robots evolved during your time in the lab?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the other interesting projects we kind of worked on it's like a type of what we call a manipulator. You can kind of think of it as an arm. However, it doesn't really have a fixed space. So depending on how it's attached to certain things, it can behave in different ways. So for instance, if there's a box and 4 of them attached to the sides of a box, it can act like maybe a dog, use 4 of its, limbs to kind of walk around. And then if it's kind of fixed to like the side of a truck, it can act more like an arm to like move a box. So this was one of the projects kind of pitched to a company for like delivery, where it can do both, manipulate it or act like a manipulator, or act like, a quadruped if it needs to like move over human terrain. So
interesting. Yeah. Okay, very cool. Can you tell us some more about the other robots in the lab? When you go on the website for the lab, it's really cool because they have a specific section for the robots. It's like, here are robots, and they have different bios and such. So can you tell us some more about the other robots in the lab?
So my lab we kind of specialize in locomotion. I think another really interesting project, I think my colleagues back there who's worked on it, is we have this like balloon robot, which essentially its legs are really lightweight, and the balloon kind of keeps it buoyant. And we're kind of pitching it as one of the safest robots out there, because it'll never really fall down. It'll always be able to lift itself back up. Although if there's a lot of wind, then you're kind of screwed. But as long as you're in the lab setting, there's other various things like trying to use like gusts of air to like move it in specific directions. We have some like omnidirectional wheeled robots that essentially, I guess you can kind of think of it similar to BB-8 in a way, but the form factor is a lot different. It looks more like a unicycle in a way. We have like climbing robots. We have like 4-legged, 6-legged. Before we had 3-legged, but I don't think that guy's operational or up and running. But we have a lot. We have a lot that we go through. But
is it sad for people at all, like in the lab, when maybe one doesn't work?
I think we're, in some ways we're sad. In some ways it's a little bit of a relief, because every time there's an important guest, we have to like demo all these robots. So it's just one less robot we have to demo in lab. But I think there's a little bit of sadness as well. So there are some robots that are retired that we kind of keep, in a certain place. But then that just gives more room for a lot of the newer robots that we have.
Totally amazing. So in the film the audience is about to watch, called AI, no spoilers, of course, since this is a pre-conversation, a highly advanced robotic boy longs to become real. So through your time in robotics, how have Have you seen any evidence of the boundaries between maybe human and robot minds becoming closer or perhaps even undistinguishable? Or is this kind of just more of a distant fantasy?
So I would say we're still far away. However, kind of looking at the trend, 10, 20 years ago, the morphology, the movements, everything has become a lot smoother, more human-like. However, I do think kind of like the core fundamentals of the algorithms themselves need to improve a lot more. I don't think we're anywhere close to. With that being said, I read news articles or I'll see headlines or AI scientist believes AI has been created in X lab, but I don't buy any of that.
For sure, yeah. Has there been something that kind of really impressed you in the space in terms of this closeness, maybe?
I do think a lot of the stuff with ChatGPT has been really impressive. I do think there's, again, a long way to go. I think the underlying algorithm itself, I think we were talking about this earlier, but a lot of the fundamentals I feel have been created around the 1960s, but what has really increased was the computational efficiency or computational power that we're accessing and scaling up those algorithms to do really interesting things. So.
Totally. That's really fascinating too, that some of this stuff that you're still working on and building on was made in the 1960s, and so.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think about. But
yeah, reworking and.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of engineering going on, but the true fundamentals, there's been other subfields, but they haven't been as prominent just because I think scaling up is a very powerful thing, but I don't think that's the only thing you need. I think there's a core component that's still missing.
What is kind of your outlook on the future of human and machine relationships as the technology progresses?
I would like to be positive, but I do acknowledge that I think there will be a lot of friction kind of going forward and what kind of roles, I guess, machines play in day-to-day life and how that kind of affects us, I guess, economically or in terms of, jobs or other things like that. But I still think we're okay. I still think, for the most part, a lot of these things will be additional tools to just make things more efficient. But if you're talking about long-term future, then I think it's more of a societal question about how do we handle this, but I don't think too much about that.
And are there any ways that people from the public can interact or engage with the lab?
From time to time, we do give tours, or we try to do some form of outreach. My advisor does a lot of public speaking events. A lot in Korea, some over here as well. I guess we do get a lot of emails, and sometimes we do take summer interns or other people like that. So there's ways, I guess, if they go to the website or you can randomly spot us at UCLA, I guess. And all the lab members are really friendly. They're really nice guys. So just asking them questions too if you randomly happen to be there.
Amazing. Any questions from the audience about? Yes, right back there.
So the full-scale humanoid robot, we tested outside and walked around campus. I think it just kind of depends what the most recent deadline we have. So most of our robots, at some point, we do demonstrations outside on campus, whether it's for any sort of promotions or recordings or things like that. One of the package delivery robots was also demoed outside. So we do a lot of things outside. Yeah.
What is the reaction like on campus when these things are walking around?
There's a lot of excitement, a lot of questions, and a lot of people following us sometimes, which is a little bit nerve-wracking, saying that a lot of these things are still kind of in development. So we try our best, since our lab is quite large, we bring out a large crew to just make sure that there's enough space for the robot so that people don't get hurt. So a lot of, I guess, prototypes, they'll usually have what we call a gantry or some sort of safety system to hook the robot up to in case it falls. We, from time to time, like to take off the gantry and just let the robot go free. We push things to the limits a little bit, but we have, I guess, enough people to kind of walk with the robot in case it falls down. In the soccer competition, the robot can fall down at any time, so we need to kind of be prepared for these things in general. So it's just kind of good practice overall, and we do a lot of demos and stuff.
Any other questions? Yes.
So there are sensors that take in data and react to kind of what's happening in the real world. Right now, there's kind of a divide, kind of whether we should do more of a physics-based model or something more like learning. The only downside is with learning, you need a lot of data, and usually they get it from simulation, but that's not really representative of the real world most of the time. So there's a lot of research being done into that, but yeah, everything is we take in data and then we kind of use a physics-based model and some other algorithms to kind of propagate stuff forward, but yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of research going on to making, I guess, robots behave like certain animals, or even trying to take certain, I guess, characteristics from animals and trying to slap it onto like a different animal to kind of see if there's any sort of efficiency that's gained from that. Yeah, I mean, I think ideally a lot of people say that evolution has had so many more years of data or experience that evolution is probably closer to like some sort of what we say is like a global minima, or like the best possible way to walk, for example, most energy efficient. So eventually, if our algorithms get better and better, it'll eventually converge to kind of the same style of walking in that sense. So in that sense, I think, but so for quadrupeds, it's a little bit more of a stable system. So we can get really, I guess, dog-like or how cat-like kind of movements, or we're very close, I think, to that.
Any other last questions? Yes. Ooh, do you have favorites?
Yeah, some do. So, for example, for this RoboCup competition or robot soccer competition we're having, the guy who originally created it, has graduated for like 2 or 3 years now, and he's working at Tesla on their like humanoid robot. But he'll come and fly in on the weekends to come help us like, try and get it ready for competition during his free time. Just because it's like his baby, right? He wants to make sure that like she performs well, and like we can hopefully win this year. But yeah, there are definitely guys who get very, very attached. Which I think again, if you're spending, some guys spend 6-7 years, and then the accumulation of that is this singular robot. For a lot of them, it means a lot more than just kind of a robot itself, but the accumulation or kind of their success in completing their PhD. So, yeah.
Sure. This one's a she, he said.
Oh, Artemis. Artemis, I guess, is technically, female name, but the creator is a guy.
Yes.
Yes.
What determines that?
I guess he came up with it, so I'll let him. There's nothing I'm doing, but yeah.
We'll give it up for Gabe. Thank you so much, Gabe.
Thank you.